I didn't beat addiction. What I did was build a life that I didn't need to escape from anymore. I used to think the hardest part of that addiction was the drugs and the substances and the drink. But looking back now, that was never the truth. The hardest part was never the substances. It wasn't even the debt I got myself in. It wasn't even the chaos that I was creating around me and my life. The hardest part was waking up every single morning with this quiet feeling in my chest that something about my life wasn't right, and then spending the rest of the day doing absolutely everything I could to avoid listening to the voice in my head. People imagine addiction as one dramatic moment after another, but for me it wasn't like that at all. It was surprisingly ordinary. It was waking up feeling behind before the day had even started, opening up my banking app with already that sick feeling in my stomach because I knew the numbers weren't going to be pleasant to read. I was always telling people I was busy when the truth was I just couldn't bear to sit quietly with my own thoughts. It was laughing with people during the day and then lying awake at night wondering why, despite all the noise, I still felt empty. The strange thing is that from the outside, my life probably didn't look that unusual. I still had dreams, I still talked about businesses, I still trained, I still had moments that actually felt all right. And I felt like everything was going to work out. But if you met me back then, you'd describe me as ambitious. What you wouldn't have seen was underneath all of that ambition was a man who didn't believe he was enough. And every decision I made, whether it was chasing money, chasing success, or another escape, was really an attempt to silence that feeling in my head and my heart for just a few more hours. That's the part that nobody tells you. People think the addiction's about loving drugs, but it isn't. It's about desperately wanting a break from yourself. The drugs were never the destination. They were just the quickest route I had away from my own mind. Even after I stopped taking them, I realised something that frightened me more than the addiction and the drug dealers and the debt ever did. The drugs were gone, but the man who needed them was still standing there. I still didn't know how to sit in silence without reaching for another bag. It became hard to sit with the thoughts in my head. If it wasn't an achievement or another goal, another plan, another reason to believe that happiness was waiting for me at the end of a pot of gold, because for years, I lived with this belief that my life would finally begin once I reached that next milestone. I genuinely believed that if I made enough money, won enough boxing fights, built the right physique, or proved enough people wrong, that one day I'd wake up and finally be at peace. Have you ever noticed how your mind does that to you? It keeps on moving the finish line. You tell yourself that you'll be happy when you lose that weight. And then all of a sudden you lose it, and suddenly it's about building more muscle or getting better teeth. You tell better teeth, better physique, better hairline. We're living in that era of looking perfect. You tell yourself that you'll finally be happy when people respect you. Then you spend your life worrying about whether they'll still be talking about you when you leave the room. The finish line always keeps on moving because it was never the finish line that was broken. It was the story that you were telling yourself about yourself. I realised that one afternoon when I was sitting on my own after getting clean. There was no dramatic music playing. There was no life-changing motivational speech. There was no magical breakthrough moment, just silence. And for the first time in years, I couldn't blame the drugs anymore. I couldn't blame my finances. I couldn't blame anybody else because it was just me. I remember sitting there thinking, if everything I've spent years blaming disappears and I still don't like the life I'm living, then maybe I've been asking the wrong question all along. That thought hit me harder than any punch I've ever taken in the boxing ring, because up until that moment, I spent years asking, how do I become more successful? I'd never stopped to ask myself, why do I believe success is the thing that's going to save me and make me feel good enough? Those are two completely different questions. One sends you chasing, the other one sends you home. That was the beginning of everything starting to change for me. And it wasn't overnight. It wasn't because I suddenly became more disciplined, not because I found the perfect morning routine. All of these things are helpful. But in reality, it all changed because I slowly started rebuilding the relationship that I had with myself. I went to therapy because I realised I couldn't outwork the beliefs that I've been carrying around with me since a kid. I invested in coaching because I accepted that I couldn't see my own blind spots and where I was letting myself down. I started meditating because I'd spent all these years filling every quiet moment with noise, and I needed to remember what my own thoughts sounded like underneath all that distraction. I started recording my own affirmations so I could start to reprogram my subconscious mind, because I finally understood that the person I've been listening to most for years wasn't some motivational speaker or a mentor. It was that critical voice inside my own head telling me I've got to do more, be more, have more. Then, almost by accident, I started writing down a few things that I was grateful for each day. And if you'd have told me back then that gratitude would become the foundation of my life, I'd have probably laughed at you in your face, because I was in debt, I was battling addiction and losing, I was 20 grand in debt, and my confidence was hanging on by a thread. But gratitude sounded like something people did when life was already going well. But I couldn't have been more wrong. Gratitude didn't change my circumstances overnight, it changed how I looked at them. And when you change the way you look at your life, something remarkable starts to happen. You start making decisions from a place of fear and start making them from a place of self-respect. You stop looking after your body because you hate what you see in your mirror and want to feel good enough, and you start looking after it because you're grateful it's carried you through everything you thought would destroy you. You stop chasing money because you're terrified of being broke forever, and start creating value because you genuinely believe you've got something worth giving. And that's where gratitude and growth came from. It's not just the branding for my coaching. It's not just some clever marketing idea. It came from a man who realized that gratitude isn't the reward that you receive after building a great life. It's the foundation that allows you to build a great life in the first place. And today, people sometimes ask me what's changed, because they see me training, they see me coaching, they see me speaking at businesses and at public speaking gigs, they see me creating content every day, and they see someone who's genuinely excited about his future. But what they don't see are those thousands of ordinary mornings where nobody was applauding me. The mornings where I still had doubts, but I trained anyway. The mornings when I still felt overwhelmed, but I wrote in my journal anyway. Those difficult conversations I didn't want to have. The therapy sessions that forced me to confront the parts of myself that I'd spent years hiding from, and the countless moments where I had to decide whether I was going to become another victim of my past or finally become a student of it. And it was those moments that changed my life. And it wasn't because they were dramatic, it's because they were repeated over and over again until they compounded. And that's what I wish you just understood this little bit more. You are not one breakthrough away from becoming the person that you want to be, but you are one honest decision away, and repeated that enough times, it'll become your identity. And that's why I believe you don't need another motivational video, because motivation comes and goes like a sugar rush. What lasts is your perspective. What lasts is your identity. And what lasts is waking up on one ordinary Tuesday morning, making yourself a coffee, opening the curtains and realising for the first time in years you don't need to escape the life that's waiting for you outside of your front door. So if you've watched this far, there's a good chance that something I've said's resonated with you in some way. You recognise yourself in my story. Maybe your struggle isn't addiction. Maybe it's anxiety, burnout, debt, people-pleasing, overthinking, or that exhausting feeling that you're living a life that no longer fits the person you're becoming. But whatever it is, don't make the mistake that I've made for years in convincing yourself that another 6 months of figuring out alone will somehow produce a different result. Because if you're ready to finally have that one honest conversation about where you are, where you want to be, and what's genuinely standing in your way, click the link in the description and book your £99 breakthrough call. Because for 60 minutes, we'll slow everything down. We'll look at your life without the mask, without all the performance and without the pressure, and have all the answers. And we'll uncover the patterns that have been pulling you back into the same place. And if we're the right fit, I'll show you what rebuilding your life looks like over the next 90 days. No pressure, no pretending, no miracle promises, just one honest conversation, because sometimes that's all it takes. And if there's one thing I want you to remember long after this video finishes, it's this. I didn't overcome addiction because I suddenly became stronger than everybody else and than the drugs. I overcame addiction because one small decision at a time, I started to build a life that felt more beautiful than escaping through another bag of drugs. The day your real life becomes more attractive than the place you've been running to is the day that you finally become free. Let's go.